Commissioner Kovo, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? You don't know it?
Endorsed by the Dems of Miami-Dade, where they're obviously comfy with more of the same freaking bozos. B-O-Z-O bozos. She's completely unqualified for this gig. Yeah, she's just DLP in a fancy wig. Oh, that's Kovo. Please don't vote for Kovo. No, don't vote for Kovo.
You know what? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't even know.
Well, we're not the world's most intelligent folk, but you gotta use your head and you must be informed as a voter. Voter. She's ignored the corruption inside City Hall. Yeah, her silence helped it turn into a free-for-all thanks to Kovo. Please don't vote for Kovo. It's a vote for Coroyo. He's that guy who beat his wife.
I have hit women.
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't even know.
Well, she serves a special interest in the lobbyists, and she doesn't know the Pledge of Allegiance. She's a dirty liar and she's all veneer. She's there for Christian over to puppeteer. When it comes to Commissioner for District 2, I'm not asking you politely, I am telling you, don't vote Kovo. Please don't vote for Kovo. No, don't vote for Kovo.
I have no idea.
Miami Commissioner Sabina Covo and her campaign consultant did not respond to multiple requests for an interview on today's show.
Well, I wonder why.
Well, she is the incumbent. She was elected in February in a special election where she won with 29% of the vote. Now she needs 51% of the vote, and she is flailing. That's why. And she doesn't want to come to any place that's going to ask her tough questions. And let me explain this a little bit, break it down why this is important. It feels, I know, a little bit provincial, but the city of Miami is the largest municipality in Miami-Dade County, about 500,000 people. And it's divided only into 5 districts, so there's 5 commissioners. I think it has the least representation based on population of any city, major or small, in the entire country. And District 2, who she represents, generates over 70% of the revenue of the entire city. I mean, that means that they spread the rest of it around to the welfare queens, Joe Carollo and Alex Diaz-Laportilla and Manny Reyes.
Comunista! Comunista!
It's basically socialism, Roy. But here's the thing. This coastal district, which includes Coconut Grove and Brickell and downtown and Edgewater, they are basically paying for 70% of the chicanery, buffoonery, and that is plaguing the city. And Sabina Covo has, over the last 9 months, I mean, when you consider what has happened in Miami, the arrest of a sitting commissioner, the $63.5 million corruption judgment against another commissioner, the sentencing of the mayor's former comms director for molesting a teenage boy in City Hall. He's now serving federal prison time and a registered sex offender. The mayor himself being investigated by the FBI for alleged bribery. And what has she done about it? She's just sat there silently and been complicit in all of it. And she is, once again, being endorsed by the Miami-Dade Democrats. And I think this sends a message of treachery to Democrats nationwide, that this is going to be a scary election season coming up next year. And I think that it's time for them to not miss an opportunity. Well, I should say time to miss an opportunity Because if you keep endorsing mediocre and corrupt candidates, basically going against your own philosophy and ideology and mandate. I've been a Democrat since 2018 now in the state of Florida, and it sucks, Roy. And if you look at some of the negative ads that Sabina Covo and her campaign are putting out, I'm holding them up now like we're playing poker here. The Trumpian every accusation is a confession that Republicans have adopted, that's exactly what she's doing here. I mean, she is accusing her opponents of engaging in the corruption and silence and complicity and special interest money that she is actually taking part in. She is, in fact, the candidate of the special interests, the corrupt commissioners, the Miami Mafia. She is the chosen candidate of that Miami Mafia. And I think it's time for let's cut that there. And of course, which we've talked about last week, her campaign consultant is a registered foreign agent of Qatar, which has been Hamas headquarters for the last several years, and the location from which they launched the terrorist attacks against Israel on October 7th. If this is who the Democrats are going to ally themselves with, they're going to have some serious problems going into 2024. The number one target of Sabina Covo's negative ad campaign, I call it a negative ad campaign. She hasn't gone negative. She's just lying, is what it seems, is her challenger, Damian Pardo. Damian, I'm holding up now no less than 4, by my count, negative flyers here attacking you. That amounts to thousands of dollars. I know she's got a lot of money, and some of it's squirreled away in various political committees and mystery PCs and things, but that's a lot of money going after you. She also has enough money to poll, which means that they probably know something that at least I don't, which is that you're a real threat to her reelection campaign here. I'd like to start there. Are you flattered that they're punching down at you? Or?
Absolutely flattered. It's great. I mean, obviously, we're doing very well if this amount of negative activity is headed our way. Absolutely.
Now, I want to take a moment, though. I mean, some of it is hilarious, almost biblical looking. She's got you here in front of a painting of burning books, accusing you of staying silent on corruption, which is pretty funny. Deceptive Damian Pardo, she calls you. Pay for play Pardo. Would you like to react to some of these accusations here?
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, first of all, it couldn't be further from the truth, but I see a lot of it is pure projection on their part because if there's ever been pay to play, it's Sabina Covo. She's on the payroll of a developer. Her contributions from developers are in the 200,000 range. Lobbyists are in the 40,000 range. So, I mean, she's 90% of the time voting with Diaz La Portilla and Carollo, and their fundraising links between all three. So, I mean, I feel like the entire thing is just projection on their part and she stayed silent. You know, at that press conference, the moment the Carollo verdict came down, I was the only candidate that went on and, called for his resignation and removal. Same with Diaz La Portilla. I issued a statement district-wide immediately. She just sat on the dais and didn't say a word during all of that. And in fact, she's supposed to be the investigative journalist, right? The one who was put there to help root out corruption. And all she's done is actually just fit right in. The opposite of what people want.
I want to point out, I want to run that clip from the presser because she's accused you in flyer after flyer about being silent on corruption. Meanwhile, she has served as commissioner during the most corrupt period in the history of Miami since 1997, by my estimation. And meanwhile, a few months ago, there was this press conference, not only outside City Hall, but directly outside the office of Joe Carollo. And this is what you said there.
I'm here to tell you we can do better in the city of Miami. We are currently spending millions of dollars defending his illegal actions, and now we're exposed to over a $60 million verdict. Instead of using community resources for petty vendettas and ego-driven initiatives, the city of Miami deserves representation that cares about its people and the problems they struggle with on a daily basis. Today is a day for good people who are afraid to speak up. And it's a day for city government to get back to basics and to serving its residents. And let's be clear, what we're saying here in no uncertain terms is that we want Joe Carollo to resign or to be removed from public office.
If that's silence, I'd like you to keep up the quiet there. To be clear, this was immediately following the $63.5 million corruption verdict against Joe Carollo for weaponizing city government and violating the constitutional rights of business owners in Little Havana and Calle Ocho. I know a neighborhood that means a lot to you in your life and career here in Miami. But ¿dónde está Sabina Covo? Where was she? Was she hiding
Nowhere.
inside City Hall with her BFF Joe Carollo? Where was she?
Listen, never said a word. And if you actually watch those commission meetings and you watch even the budget hearings, you see a camaraderie between Kovo and Carollo, the entire time. That isn't what District 2 residents and voters were looking for when they elected Sabina Covo. That's for sure.
And as you mentioned earlier, her voting record on the dais over the last 9 months, where she has been eerily, deafeningly silent on this matter of corruption during FBI investigations, arrests of her fellow commissioners, multi-million-dollar lawsuits against not only the commissioners, but the city itself. You've got a district here who is paying most of these criminal defense and civil defense fees as well. What is your message to the people of District 2? What is your, if you had 30 seconds right now, what would you tell the people of District 2 that really distinguishes you from the pack here?
It's been the same from day one. I'm someone who has spoken out from the very beginning, over 35 years as a public servant and a financial professional. And we must root out corruption. I don't think people understand the linkage between corruption and a lot of our daily problems that start with overdevelopment, traffic, flooding. We've got to deal with that. We've got to stop play to pay. Otherwise, we're never going to progress as a city. I'm committed to doing that and empowering our residents to do better.
I'd say if this is silence and deception, keep it up. Because it seems like a pretty good message. Damian Pardo is running for City of Miami District 2. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Joining us next from the District 2 City of Miami race is somebody who's new to the negative campaigning here on the part of the Kovo campaign. Eddy Leal, who ran a pretty close second to Sabina Covo during the February special election, where she only won with 29% of the vote. Eddy Leal came in second with about 22% of the vote. Eddy, you did not appear in her TV commercial where she took shots at your challengers, Damian Pardo and James Torres. But here you are in her latest flyer being called the defender of slumlords who put low-income residents at risk. I'd like to start off by allowing you to respond to that accusation.
So this is a rerun of the past attack that I faced in the past election. And I do appreciate the opportunity to address it. I'll address it again. This attack is knowingly false and by its nature defamatory. I actually defended the owner of the property, or one of the owners, that was trying to obtain ownership control in order to actually make the repairs. The person that we were fighting was a disbarred attorney that now is disbarred. So to make the accusation that I was, or that my client was involved in any of that, is completely even against the facts of the own article that they cite to. Number two, I think you would agree with me that it's disheartening that community leaders actually studied this issue. Mel Meinhardt reviewed it and wrote to the sponsors and said, Leo, the accusation that you've lodged against him has no merits. There are no facts to support this. And he asked to be withdrawn. They never did. And this is just the same pattern and practice. Earlier this year, I called attention to a park in the Brickell area that was given away to developers. And I was called by her campaign a liar. None of it was addressed in terms of the facts and in terms of the substance. So, I tell the elected officials and I tell our residents, is that the elected commissioner that you want? I certainly don't, because this is another rerun of another attack that had no basis then and it has no basis now. And if you actually read the article that is referring to it, there's none there. It's just not factually correct.
Eddy Leal, on the front of this flyer that contains the attack against you and James Torres and Damian Pardo on the back. It says that Sabina Covo is the only candidate with a comprehensive plan to fight corruption and clean up City Hall, which is news to me because she's been there for the last 9 months, during which we've seen an extraordinary amount of buffoonery and illegality and finally, once and for all, some accountability for a change. But you actually worked inside City Hall. You were I think your title was Special Counsel to Mayor Francis Suarez. So you were kind of there during an equally, let's say, shady period. So what is your plan for combating corruption?
Thank you for the question. So it's very simple. We start with sunshine is the best disinfectant. And what do I mean by that? The first thing that I'm going to do as your commissioner is that we'll have a discussion item on the agenda that we will publicly discuss how much we've incurred defending and prosecuting cases that nobody wants to continue. And I refer to the $65 million judgment against Carollo, the redistricting appeal, and the challenges that they've launched against Gabela in order to not have him run in the District 1 race. So many of the things are money that the taxpayers are incurring, myself included, that we should at least provide an accounting. And that's something that the commissioner at a minimum can do. Number two is if you try to issue a records request to the city of Miami, you're likely going to get a nice price tag associated with that records request. So they're going to tell you, oh, we're happy to give you the documents, but it's going to cost you $7-8 grand for us to quote unquote review the documents. I will enact the legislation or ask for legislation to be enacted for this process to be removed, because who has that amount of money in order for you to actually obtain any of the documents? And it's done in a way to prevent access to documents that should be otherwise publicly available. And that, last but not least, I've said it multiple times in many of the forums that I've attended, we need to make sure that we have more commissioners. We only have 5 commissioners to represent, in each commissioner, more than 100,000 people or close to 100,000 people. That is, compared to any other city of any size, not proportional to one commissioner to represent that many people. I think it's time for us to revisit that, and it requires a charter amendment and the voters to be able to vote on a charter amendment through a petition process. So I think how we start and how we initiate is in concrete steps. Everybody talks about corruption and what can be done. Those are knowing ways that you can start inside on day one. And you pointed out that for 9 months, she hasn't done any of this, and she could have certainly done a portion of this right there, and none of this happened. None of it. So it's very disappointing. That's one of the reasons that I'm running, because there are steps that can be taken to start kind of cleaning house, and none of them have been taken. Obviously, now they are telling you that they're going to do all sorts of things if you give them the vote. And the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, and that's what's happening here. Voting for her is to get the same result. Don't expect any changes. None of them are going to happen.
I feel like that every week I do this show. What is the definition of insanity? Eddy Leal is running for City of Miami Commissioner, District 2, a very important position. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And finally, running for District 2 in the City of Miami is James Torres, also the target of Sabina Covo's latest negative flyer, along with Damian Pardo and Eddy Leal. And James, you and Damian Pardo take up about half of Sabina Covo's TV ad, where kind of the first half is about her and the second half is about how terrible you guys are. It must be very flattering to be taking up that kind of real estate in a very expensive TV ad. Now, unfortunately, we could not find the ad online, which is weird because Sabina Covo's ad from the February campaign during the special election, that's all over the internet. She seems to be not as proud of this one. So talk to me. Are you flattered that you are living, especially with the cost of living in this town, rent-free in Sabina Covo's head?
I think it's great, but who's paying for it is the bigger question, right? It's the billboard companies that are funding her PAC, which is an interesting tidbit because, when you see these commercials is Can you get a different message? I think she's disenfranchising the voters of the district, to be quite honest with you.
So there is a pretty frantic attempt, big moneyed attempt to put LED billboards all over downtown and Brickell, almost like a Times Square kind of a situation. I know the neighbors are not happy about it, particularly with the, what I imagine is the light pollution entering into everybody's apartments and places of business. And it seems that she killed that, though, at least temporarily. Is that right? That effort?
Well, she killed it temporarily. And let's be honest, I was at the forefront of it where I showed up to the PZAB and also City Hall with over 2,000 signatures on a petition. But the real one that really kind of started getting the ball rolling was myself and Manolo Reyes, as Sabina Covo stood silent and didn't say anything until the pressure was on. So in all intended purposes, she received the money, thought about it, and now it's dead for now. And we know how that works, Billy. We know how things work when things are, quote unquote, dead.
Well, especially when you have an election coming up. And then since it was unanimously voted down, any of the commissioners who voted against it are allowed within the next 6 months by law to bring it back up again. And I've no doubt this thing will be resuscitated and will pass at least 3-2, if not 4-1, when it is reintroduced. So this was really just to save her for this election, I'm thinking, to give her some sort of legislative victory so she can claim that, look, I'm helping my constituents, and then the special interests ultimately win in the long run. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. But here's the caveat to that. She's not going to win, right? And I'm going to be at the forefront of this, like I have been front and center for the community, because at the end of the day, she's spending money hand over fist of special interests to kind of have this legislative win. But her time is measured, and she's not going to be there, Billy. At the end of the day, she's not, and that's a fact.
Well,
people know that.
She's clearly concerned about you and Damian Pardo and Eddy Leal, as evidenced by her TV ad, as evidenced by the mailer. I do want to give you an opportunity, however, to respond to the allegation in this negative mailer, which says that James Torres faced multiple criminal charges, including for endangerment of a minor. And it quotes here from a Miami Herald story.
Listen, I've been at the forefront of that question. I think you were present last year. I was very honest and transparent. We're talking about something that occurred 30 years ago, which is really no there there, right? This was a divorce scenario that happened. It was addressed. No charges were given. At the end of the day, I walked out paying $185 for window tinting in the state of Arizona. She wants to make it an issue because she's grabbing at straws. And the voters are quite frankly tired of it. Everyone that I speak to is kind of like, James, we already know this was due to a divorce and nothing happened. The worst thing that happened is you paid a $185 fine. So Christian Overett and her are just grabbing at straws because she knows we're a threat. She knows we're a threat because we're not going to be tied into the machine of the corruption of other commissioners that are funding her campaign, Billy. I mean, that's a fact.
What you mean her campaign is being funded by Joe Carollo, by Alex Diaz-Laportilla, by all the special interests and attorneys and lobbyists who support them? I guess that's what you're getting at there? Yeah.
I mean, it's not what I'm getting at. It's a fact. I mean, look at the campaign reports, look at the PAC reports. And, let us also not forget, Eddy Leal, who's now trying to separate himself from being the mayor's attorney and saying elected official. He was his wingman, right? And that's why she's probably attacking him. And, voters also need to know that as well. You also have Damian Pardo that's been attacked on it. But, the interesting thing about that piece, Billy, is that Pardo was also going with Carollo for his festival in Calle Ocho. You have to kiss the ring to get any money from Joe Carollo. So why isn't that being brought up in a way that it should have?
Well, that's how it works in The Godfather. It says here that Sabina Covo is the only candidate with a comprehensive plan to fight corruption and clean up City Hall. We only have about 30 seconds, but what do you plan to do about corruption in City Hall?
I plan to raise my hand and make the community whole by telling everybody that we have always been at the forefront of fighting corruption. I will make sure that, when this bill is due of this $63 million lawsuit, we're not going to pay for it. And that's how we're going to start sending a clear message to everybody else. People laugh when I turn around and say, Vicky Mendez, you're going to take a vacation. I can't force her to take a vacation, but it's going to put her on notice as well as anybody else. And I want to ask if you're going to become giving us information, we're going to have clear protective on whistleblowers. We're going to help you. So be front and center. Tell us what's going on. Be our eyes and ears. You deserve it, Billy. Your kids deserve it, and I deserve it, and the voters of District 2.
James Torres is running for City of Miami Commission District 2. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks for the time today.
Billy.
Roy.
What's going on with Ron DeSantis?
Oh, we are back to fear in Florida men on the campaign trail.
I was right in the middle of a reptile zoo. And somebody was giving booze to these goddamn things.
Bunch of drunks.
It's been another banner week on the DeSantis campaign. So DeSantis is still a distant second place to the former president, Donald Trump. Trump's at about 58% he's polling. DeSantis is about 12%. But Nikki Haley now is within striking distance. I mean, within the margin of error at about 11%. She's up. So, she is right behind DeSantis. And DeSantis is getting all the headlines that he deserves right now. Big New York Times story, how Ron DeSantis lost the internet. Which has just been, it's a really interesting deep dive into what they're calling the meme wars and how DeSantis employs this troll army on social media that have just been failing left and right. And the Trump campaign and their troll army has just been absolutely kicking their asses all over the internet.
Oh, that's BS. No, totally BS.
So this kind of perennial online campaign that Ron DeSantis has been running was a failure from the get-go. You remember on the website formerly known as Twitter is how he launched his campaign with that just glitch-ridden, interview with Elon Musk, which was just an absolute mess.
Do you honestly believe that's credible?
And what else in the headlines? DeSantis touted his Israel rescue flights, then left Americans stranded in Cyprus.
Of course he did.
Of course he did. The only flights that really work out is when he's trying to deport people to Martha's Vineyard from Texas for whatever reason. But the head of this nonprofit Project Dynamo that is working and partnering with the state to get Israelis out of the war-torn areas basically said, we'll take you to the United States, and instead left them in Cyprus for days with absolutely no information, no communication, and because Florida. And most recently, top ally of Ron DeSantis has bashed his response to anti-Semitism and the neo-Nazis marching in the state, and he has now switched his endorsement to Donald Trump. He's a state representative, Randy Fine, and he headed the, I think, Jews for DeSantis initiative when DeSantis first ran for office. And this guy, talking about Randy Fine, reminds me of that famous clickhole headline, heartbreaking, the worst person you know just made a great point. That's what this reminds me of, because Randy Fine has been lockstep, side by side, with DeSantis on the front lines of the idiotic culture wars that have basically helped to not only define his governorship in Florida, but help derail his presidential dreams as well. The laws targeting LGBTQ plus people, his unconstitutional bill to ban drag and pride events. Another one of his worst hits was the insanely unconstitutional anti-protest bill that granted civil immunity to drivers who run over protesters with their car. Randy Fine introduced the law targeting Disney World that even Trump called stupid, going after one of the state's single largest employers and revenue generators. And Fine openly admitted in a quote that is now featured evidence in a major federal First Amendment lawsuit against our state that they passed that law to target one company, Disney, out of political revenge. So it's kind of like, when the worst people in the world kind of turn on each other and you're just kind of like, let them eat each other alive.
You're goddamn right, meatball. A crucial part of our democracy is the peaceful transfer of power. Some people think that Trump's actions on January 6th and beyond violated the key principles of America and the Constitution set forth by our founding fathers. Do you believe that Trump violated the peaceful transfer of power, a key principle that of American democracy that we must uphold?
Are you in high school?
Yeah.
Where do you go to school? You go around here?
Vermont. I live in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay. So you're from Vermont. Well, thank you for the question. So here's what I know. If this election is about Biden's failures and our vision for the future, we are going to win. If it's about relitigating things that happened 2-3 years ago, we're going to lose.
That was 15-year-old Quinn Mitchell, a high school student and aspiring journalist from New Hampshire, America's longtime first primary state. Over the past 2 elections, Quinn has gone to more than 85 political events, met over 35 presidential candidates, and asked tough questions of the likes of Chris Christie, Beto O'Rourke, and even Joe Biden. Our producer, Matt Sullivan, has taken to calling him
Little Billy Corben,
because he's basically known for annoying thin-skinned politicians. And so that was a clip from just this past June when Quinn went to a DeSantis event in the town of Hollis, New Hampshire, and asked the Florida governor a very good question. Quinn, DeSantis has gotten a reputation for being, let me be diplomatic, awkward in his interactions with the public on the campaign trail. For a young man who's now encountered over 35 White House hopefuls, how did you find his bedside manner and his response to your question initially?
I just don't think how he's on the trail and how he's conducting himself in New Hampshire is going to play for him, because often you'll find his, never back down officials. They like to, control the environment. They don't want any spontaneous encounters. They don't really like any, hard questions. It's just something that's not going to play in New Hampshire, a state where, retail politics really matters. And that, that question of mine you just played, his answer, I don't think it's going to play, because he's trying to draw this, fine line of, not condemning what happened on January 6th. And it's just extremely hypocritical, because he's saying that we shouldn't relitigate, things that happened 2 or 3 years ago, when his whole talk was relitigating things when it came to Florida and COVID, and the economy. And, it's just something that's not going to play in New Hampshire. We're a state that really values retail politics.
Yeah, he really seemed to have dodged the question, and it resulted in a brutal Daily Beast headline. Ron DeSantis is afraid of questions from a 15-year-old. I love it. Anyway, I really do. And it really does look, if there's like a side-by-side here of you and I in this interview, just so you know, this is like a before and after image right now. I want you to know that this is how it ends up, Quinn. This is how you end up. I just want you to know. I'm just kidding. I think this kid's got a much better shot than I ever have. I want to be him when I grow up.
Little Billy Corben.
But this was not your last encounter, though. And so to be clear, Never Back Down, this is the PAC that is basically running DeSantis's campaign, and vice versa. This seems to be one of the grayest lines between, or the blurriest line between a PAC and a campaign that I've ever seen. They're not even really pretending to be independent entities at all. But to be clear, you have encountered these people and you have not backed down. So what happened? What happened next year in your odyssey with DeSantis through New Hampshire?
You mean like the events that followed that June 27th town hall?
Yeah, I think you've encountered them like every month since then, haven't you?
Oh yeah. I knew I wanted to encounter him because I wanted to ask the questions that matter. Usually at a DeSantis event, there's going to be like a woke question 5 times. It just gets, repetitive, and it's not enlightening for voters. So I want to ask those questions that he's not getting asked, but it's on a lot of people's minds. Right after that event, I went to a July 4th parade because I in part wanted to, apologize because my goal at this event is to never make a candidate look stupid. In that event, he did look stupid in the eyes of some. I want them to give an answer that would enlighten some people. And what shocked me is that he was, struggling to answer that in 30 seconds. And that's really is a question. His advisor should have been preparing him for months. So I approached the governor 2 times. First 2 times at the July 4th parade, I was physically blocked by staffers from Never Back Down. We can talk about their little unnatural connection later. I have a whole lot to say about that. And the 3rd time I approached him, I was like, Governor, I'm that kid who asked you that question. I'm sorry for any, trouble got you in. He said, oh, I know who you are. And then, I was tugged from behind. I was physically surrounded, physically detained, not allowed to move forward at the parade, all for asking a question about January 6th. Then a month later, this is my monthly DeSantis event. I'm probably not going to be going to any others after these, but an August event, I wanted to ask him a question and, raised my hand. I didn't get to ask the question, but, when I tried to go up to him afterwards, I was again, physically blocked. My mom actually wanted to go see a family friend and she was actually physically blocked because they thought she was going to see DeSantis. And it's really bizarre to me because they're just so controlling of the environment. And I literally learned the staffer had been taking photos of me and posting them on Snapchat with the caption, got our kid. I can't believe they're communicating via Snapchat, first of all. But, it's bizarre to me. And this unnatural connection and control his PAC has over the campaign, it's unnatural. And voters are noticing it too. So it's not something that's going to play for him. And, a state in New Hampshire where we vet our candidates well and we really notice them.
I got to bounce. But before we do, I do have one last question for you because people accuse you. You're a smart, savvy young person and they say, oh, he's being manipulated by adults or his parents are writing his questions for him. How do you respond to that?
To sort of describe that relationship, in 2019, I asked a question to then Vice President Joe Biden. And on the way over, my dad was like, you should ask a question about, what is this dog's names? And I was like, Dad, no, that's a stupid question. I never asked that. Then I went up to, Vice President Biden. I asked the question. He was like, do you believe that Trump should have impeachment trials? Biden was, a bit shocked. And, he answered it. And the next day, Laura Ingraham on the Ingram angle was on, and she was like, this kid is a plan, obviously, set up by his, liberal parents. He doesn't have the intellectual capability to ask such a question. The ironic thing being, my dad encouraged me to ask, question about dogs. So that, sort of describes my relationship, but I do owe a lot to my mom for driving me to all these events. If I'm 15, I can't drive, man. So I owe a lot to her for that.
Laura Ingraham doesn't have the intellectual capability to have a television show. So I don't know why she's actually saying that.
I don't think she would debate Quinn Mitchell. I'll tell you that right now. Quinn Mitchell, the future governor of New Hampshire, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Don't forget to drunk dial the Because Miami complaint line, 786-505-9842. That's 786-505-9842. Call now, because I know you're drinking and driving while you listen to this podcast. Roy, what are the issues on this week's Wheel of Despair?
Okay. We have...
Are you okay?
I'm every week.
Yeah.
We do this Wheel of Despair bit, and every week I leave the studio depressed.
Feeling despair, would you say?
Yes.
So it's working.
Yes, it is. Okay. It's absolutely working. We have arresting homeless people.
Oh, Jesus. I see. I already feel it.
Yeah. Insurance.
Okay.
Bulldozers.
Okay.
And don't say jail.
Jail. I just said it.
Oh.
Now what?
Well, now we're in trouble. We're in trouble now.
Shall we spin the wheel?
Insurance.
Headline in Newsweek.
Oh, wow, Newsweek.
Florida residents flee state, I wish, as insurance premiums skyrocket up to 900%.
That's a lot.
Yes. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, nearly 300,000 people left Florida in 2022. It's about like 23,000 people every month, relocating mostly to Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Texas, because people cannot afford to live here anymore. We are not only the inflation capital of the United States, while inflation is coming down in all 49 states, it is coming up and sky high in the great free state of Florida. We are the most expensive healthcare state in the union. We spend the least on education and teacher salaries. And we're basically at the top of all the bad lists and on the bottom of all the good lists that you want to be high on. Well, I'd want to be high to still live
everybody
here.
Else does.
But yes, insurance. People cannot afford to insure their homes. And a lot of people are basically just taking the chance now. They're going uninsured. The problem is if you want to buy a house, or you want to get a mortgage, I should say, and you're not paying all cash, you need to have insurance. And it will absolutely more than double your monthly expenses on housing. So if you've got if you've got a mortgage payment of $3,000 a month on your house, you will be paying at least $3,000 a month in insurance on that same house.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, Roy.
Trust me, as a homeowner, that is something that I really don't want to think about.
You feeling that despair, Roy? You feeling that despair yet?
I'm feeling underwater right before we actually go underwater.
Let's spin that wheel.
They're out here arresting homeless people.
Something about the ta-da after that one really just... will you do it again, please, for me?
They're out here arresting homeless people.
People listening on the podcast are missing my jazz hands right now, which just sort of adds insult to injury to insult to injury.
Ta-da!
The headline this week, Roy, is Miami Beach Commission votes to allow the arrest of homeless people who sleep outside and decline shelter. So the city previously had a ban on outdoor sleeping, but that ordinance required police to give someone a warning before they made an arrest. The new ordinance says, F that warning, and F you, homeless people. We are going to criminalize you for sleeping outside on the earth.
Which is what humans used to do before actual lodging.
And so there's a lot of reasons, Roy, that people would decline a shelter. Shelters can be dangerous. People cannot bring some of their personal effects and their items. A lot of people have their entire, all of their worldly possessions in a shopping cart or a bag that might not be allowed into the shelter. They might not have access to certain, medicine or work or things that, means by which they make money on the street. There's all kinds of reasons. But now on a highly controversial split vote of 4-3 at the Miami Beach Commission, now we're going to basically turn people who are down on their luck, who may be dealing with mental illness or addiction, or just can't afford the insurance required to live in their homes because it's going to double their rent or double their mortgage payment or more. And so now they're going to be criminals is basically what we're going to do. And I think we learned from Jim DeFeeti on last week's show that putting people that don't belong in prison into prison is not helpful to anyone. It's not helpful to our system, and it's certainly not helpful for them. Feeling it, Roy?
Yeah. This definitely is disparate. Not feeling too great.
Let's spin the wheel.
Bulldozers.
In the city of Miami, we talked about this actually earlier this year, last year on the show. They are absolutely demolition happy at the city. I mean, they will just come and take your home or your business, and they will knock that down for nothing. They will not they will beg forgiveness, not ask permission. In fact, they won't even they will not beg forgiveness, nor will they ask permission. They will just steal your property and knock it the down.
Eminent domain type situation?
Not even. Basically, they're saying like, oh, look, you've been cited here by the code inspector for, your window having a crack in it or something not being just right in your home. And they're now calling all of those issues in the aftermath of the Champlain Towers tragedy. They're calling those are all life safety issues. This is an unsafe structure. We're going to knock your house down because you didn't repair your door.
So basically worse than any HOA that you've ever seen.
The city of Miami is a racketeering organization, Roy, in case we didn't. It's that Miami Mafia, man.
So it is a HOA.
It's yes,
You're goddamn right, Meatball.
You make a very good point. But here's the even more screwed up thing. What's happening is, Roy, is people who buy a house that the previous owners may have had the violations or may have done some illegal construction or may have screwed up, and you didn't even know about it and may have had no way of knowing about it because they didn't pull a permit and you didn't know about this, refurbishing or construction or whatever. You're now responsible. So you have homeowners now who have accrued, I should say their property has accrued so many violations and late fees and all this stuff from a previous owner or previous owners. It could be from years or even decades ago, but now the city's saying like, oh yeah, even though you bought your house 20 years ago and you didn't know about any of this, we're going to come bulldoze your house. And a woman who bought a very modest single-family home in the city of Miami was told at one point by the city of Miami that to bring her home up to code, her lovely home, it would cost her $6.5 million.
That's a lot.
A home that she bought like 20 years ago. That's perfectly fine. She's been living in. There's been no issues, no problems because of code violation before. And the city does not want to help her. That's the thing, too. She devotes all of her time to dealing with these issues. She can't go out and make a living and spend time with her family and enjoy her life. She's got to just deal with the city 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You feeling it, Roy? You feeling it?
Yeah, this is yeah.
You live in Broward. What do you care?
Oh yeah, that's true. I kind of feel better now.
What do you? Are we done with the wheel? Are we done, or do we have to do more? Let's do one more. Let's do one more.
Fine.
Uno mas.
Sure, if you say so. Don't say jail.
Hey! Happy story. All's well that ends well.
Are we sure about this?
We are. This is a happy ending. The former Florida lawmaker who sponsored the Don't Say Gay bill has just been sentenced to prison for COVID-19 relief fraud.
Oh man, that's excellent news.
36-year-old Republican Representative Joe Harding, he resigned in December after he was charged with fraudulently obtaining more than $150,000 from the Small Business Administration in pandemic aid loans. He pled guilty in March to wire fraud, money laundering, and making false statements. And now he has been sentenced to 4 months. 4 months, that's all, in federal prison. And I think he's got like another 5 years of probation after he gets out of federal prison.
Two Americas, yeah. Sure.
I think that's worthy of another tada, though. I mean,
4 months, yes, sure, fine. Still, if it was me, it'll be 20 years probably.
To leave the wheel of despair on a note of despair, just think about it. If you're homeless in Miami Beach, you could get exactly the same sentence just for sleeping outside in the city of Miami Beach.
That's true.
Roy,
Billy,
thank you for coping with another week of the wheel of despair.
I need a drink.
I think maybe we need to put that segment on hiatus.
For my own mental health.
I think we need to shelve that bit for a bit, is what I think. This week's Miami moment, we leave where we began in a perfect circle here. This cycle of corruption and violence that we live in here in the city of Miami. This is Miami Commissioner Sabina Covo at the September 29th 40th anniversary fundraiser for Care Resource. This is an LGBTQ plus centric nonprofit healthcare organization. It started out as an HIV and AIDS organization back in the 1980s. And she attended apparently to make some sort of proclamation. And what you will see now is a small sampling of her most coherent moments from a rambling and incoherent 8-minute statement. Cocaine's.
Kovo.
We cannot have a situation right now within our state and we are not the same. We are not allowed to have situations within our state in where we're not equal. And we're trying to actually show the community about, it's not about being different, it's about being diverse, happy, for happiness. And happiness means that we are all the same. We don't need to use the words. We don't need to use any type of different word. Because people say, there's hate. They're using this word. There's hate. No. We are the happiness office in City of Miami, which is District 2. My second father was part of what happened here. He was part of the way that this has been handled. And he wants privacy. And I acknowledge his privacy, and I love him to death. I am your advocate. I'm going to continue being your advocate. And you will never have my back.